Texas flexing, rolling through the SWAT. Repping for the city, hear him in the parking lot. Houston written across the jersey, ain't gon' never stop. Just fans got me tuning in, waiting for the drop. Astros, Texas, Rockets, Dynamo, they coming with it. When they pull up, got the city sitting on a fitted. Straight up Alief, hold it down, ain't gon' never quit it. Just fans got me tuning in, let my dogs get it. Southwest Alief, Texas, throw down here and it's so infectious. We ride for the Houston Astros, Rockets, Dynamo, and them Texans.
How's it going, everybody? It's Carlos, your host of the Just Fans podcast with a horrible sore throat that I can barely talk, but we're doing the show. How's it going, everybody? We got our friend Sam, the Tennessee Titans fan. Sam, how's it going, bud?
Oh, good. Just riding your coattails to get an interview with the Hall of Fame reporter. You know, same old stuff, different day.
There you go. And then we got the one and only Rios, man. How's it going, Rios?
Going good. And so how much of a privilege this is. I grew up as a little kid reading John's articles and now get the interview.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, man. Hey, I'm doing my best John McClain impression right now, man. But hey, John, I love having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and it's my pleasure to be on. And I see you guys from Alief. I used to live in Alief.
Oh, yeah?
When I came to Houston in '76 with my first wife, we lived at an apartment at Gesner and Richmond, and then we moved into Alief off of Wilcrest and Beechnut in a new complex. And in 1978, it was a 2-story townhouse. I thought I was in heaven. We got it for $35,950. And wow. I'm like, wow, $35,000 for 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, bunch of Chronicle people moved in there. And then when I got divorced, I gave my wife $5,000 to let me keep it because I thought with Brown and Root moving it out there, that price was going to skyrocket. And when I hung on to it and sold it 30 years later, it's the only place in Houston I couldn't have made a profit. I sold it to a guy, an Asian guy who lived in a complex. He gave me $25,000 for something I had paid $35,950 for 30 years sooner. But
wow.
You live and you learn. I had a blast. We used to play Chronicle and the Post used to play softball games on Sunday against each other up at the high school fields, and we had a blast up there for years. And so shout out to Alief.
There you go. I had no idea that McClain was from the Alief area or at least lived there. I used to, when you said Beechnut and Wilcrest, I was like, I lived there too. Our experience was a little different. We were in the 2000s. So, hey, that's awesome. I had no idea, John. That is amazing. Hey, so really quick, I want to, you talked about the Chronicle. I wanted to ask you, how does John McClain, who's now, a Hall of Fame in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, how does John McClain get involved with sports in general or journalism? How does that happen?
Well, my biggest honor is the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I went in there in 2006. And in my profession, there's nothing better than being the person once a year, a writer. There are thousands of writers who cover the NFL and going up there and being inducted and riding in the parade and being at the head table with all the stage with all Hall of Famers and making an induction speech and having a presenter. That was an incredible experience. And when in the Texas Sports Hall of Fame years ago, we never could put media in it because Dave Campbell, founder of Texas Football Magazine, 44-year sports editor of the Waco Tribune Herald, who hired me in 1973, he did not think that media members should be in the Hall of Fame. He would always say, we're supposed to report the news, not make the news.
Wow.
And so one time he called me and asked me if I could preside over our annual meeting at the Hall of Fame in Waco, in which we determine who are going to be the modern era and the veterans finalists that we vote on later. So we got there and we were in the meeting, and Brad Sham, voice of the Cowboys, brought up talking about media members, and he said, well, Mr. Campbell's not here. So we asked Steve Fallon, who was executive director, what would we have to do a class in media? And he said, well, let me look at the bylaws. And he said, we'd have to change the bylaws. Well, how long would that take? Well, Campbell couldn't be there because he had to be a pallbearer at a funeral. So we knew he wasn't going to walk in the door. So Steve Fowler looked, said, well, we can do it right now. And we all agreed, our committee, let's change it right now. Then we kicked around who we wanted to put in there, the icons of Texas journalism going back to the 20s through, we probably did this, I think it was 17 years ago. And we came up with this class, Dave Campbell. The other writers were Mickey Herskowitz from Houston, Blackie Sherrod from Dallas, and Dan Jenkins from Sports Illustrated. Then we had 4 broadcasters. Kern Tips, the greatest radio guy in Southwest Conference history, the late great from Houston, and Vern Lundquist, and Frank Fallon, voice of Baylor for 44 years, and Jack Dale, voice of the Red Raiders for 40 years. So that was the class. We said we're going to do another one. So we did it. We voted them in, and then we went back, changed the bylaws back, and started doing our business. Well, the meeting lasted so long, Dave Campbell walks in the room. Got really quiet. Brad Kim goes, well, McClain, you tell him. And
Oh man.
wow. McClain, what are you going to tell me? I said, well, we voted in a class of media members for the Hall of Fame, and you're one of them. He goes, what? You can't do that. That's against the bylaws. I said, we changed them. He looks over at Steve Fallon, and Steve nodded his head yes. And Campbell go, well, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to change that back. Can't do it. We've already done it. Well, we are. And his wife came over, Reba, who was a professor of journalism at Baylor forever, and she leaned down into my ear and goes, honey, he loves it. He'll be there. So we ended up having it here in conjunction with the Touchdown Club of Houston at the JW Marriott over in the Galleria, and it's an incredible event. And then we said, we're never putting in another class. And then about 15 years later, the Hall of Fame said, well, let's do another media class. And I was not there when they took the vote. And they called me, David Barron from the Chronicle, called me on his way back, said, well, we voted a media class today. And I go, oh, my God, I forgot. I had to cover Texans minicamp. And he goes, and you're in it. I said, what do you mean? He said, you're going in, you're part of the second class of the Texas Sports Hall of Fame with Mickey and Dan and Dave and Vern and all of them and Blackie. And I'm like, whoa. And I said, who else? Well, the other 7 were all from the Metroplex. And that's because our committee was heavily tilted toward the Metroplex. And they were all deserving. Frank Gleber, late Cowboys broadcaster, Randy Galloway, Bill Mercer, forever an icon up there, Eric Nadell, longtime voice of the Rangers, and a couple more. And so I was blown away. I was sitting on my patio, and I went inside and I told my wife, Carol, I said, you're not going to believe this. She said, what? I said, I just got voted into the Texas Sports Hall of Fame, second class in history. And she goes, well, great, congratulations. I said, it's the greatest honor I've ever had. She said, well, it's not as big as Canton. Yeah. I said, yes, it is. I said, you're not from Texas. You don't understand. And I went out on my patio, and I started thinking about my late father, and I put my hand in my hands and just cried like a baby. Oh, man. But when we had the induction, I thought, sure, I was going to get teary-eyed, and I may have, but I didn't cry when I was doing it. And even though I had so many of my friends from Waco out in the audience, it was an incredible experience to think that I had gone from not having a clue what I wanted to do when I went to college and taking a mass communications class at McLennan Junior College. Yeah. And because somebody told me it was easy. I was a terrible student in high school in Waco, terrible. And so I went in, enrolled in this class, and a guy next to me, we started talking about football. The class had about 100 people in there. So we talked a lot of football, and he told me he was a photographer at the Waco Tribune Herald. I said, what the hell are you doing at McLennan Junior College? He said, well, they're telling me I got to get a degree, and I'm starting out here because it's easier. I said, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to transfer all the hard courses to Baylor, where they've been a whole lot harder. And so we started talking, and he comes to me about a week later, and he just says, you know a lot about football. I said, I know more football than anybody in Waco. He said, is that right? I said, yeah, I do. He said, well, we have an opening for Friday Night Football at Tribune Herald. Would you like to do it? I said, what is it? I didn't know how to type. He said it's on Friday nights during football. It's very hectic at newspapers, and we bring in correspondents. They come in at 8. They stay till 12. They take calls on the phone from people who are calling in as correspondents from all the stadiums. They got stats and scoring summaries. You fill out the form, then you run into the sports and give it to the sports writers, and they'll write it up and put it in the paper. I said, how much does it pay? He said, $25. I said, $25 for 4 hours? Hell yeah, I'm in. This would have been 1971.
Yeah.
Football season in 71 after I graduated. And sorry. And so I did that, and it was pretty easy. But one thing I did when the newsroom with the correspondents emptied out at 12, I stuck around to talk to the sports writers, and I met one, Tony Peterson, and got to be friends with him. And so I stuck around for basketball, track, agate. When people called in track, nobody wanted to take what was track agate and fill out all the high school summaries. But I did it. And then in 1973, they had an opening, and they offered me a job, and I took it covering the lowest level of high schools. And I did that going into my junior year at Baylor. And so I stayed there almost 4 years, came to the Chronicle in 1976 to cover the original Arrows with Gordy Marty and Mark Howe. And then my first Oilers training camp was 77. And boy, I'd only been on a plane one time when I came to Houston. That was a puddle hopper from Waco to Odessa for a junior college journalism conference. And so when I was at McLennan, I asked Kurt Wallace, well, what do you need to do if you're a sports writer? Because they had told me you get in ball games free. And I said, my God, you get in games free? I said, like, if I want to go to Baylor, yeah. If I want to go to the Cowboys, yeah. Astros, sure. I said, that's the job I want. And I really was doing it just because I could get in so many games for free. And so I remember the first Cowboy game I went to, I had these big old binoculars with a zoom lens. You hit it, and it whoop. And I went up there to see the cheerleaders because that was only the third year of the Cowboy cheerleaders.
As you should.
So I'm up in a press box with this monster pair of glasses. Looks like I'm in the military, and I'm a sharpshooter. And I'm sitting there flipping on this one and this one and this one, missing most of the game. But it was fun, and it was a great experience working with Dave Campbell. And I'll tell you all one more story. 1974. At that point, I was a columnist, and I graduated from Baylor in 75. And this is pertinent because yesterday was Hank Aaron's 50th anniversary of him breaking Babe Ruth's career record for home runs. And so Campbell told me, I want you to get out of the Astrodome, do a column on Hank Aaron. The Braves are coming to town and go on a Sunday. And I said, okay. And we were too cheap to pay for me to drive and gas. So they had me go on a bus with really a bunch of really old people who wanted to go, my age now. And so we get on this bus, we stop at a crappy restaurant in College Station to eat, and then we go down, and I had gotten a press pass left for me, or Campbell did. And so I go into the press box, sit in the wrong spot. They say, are you a member of Baseball Writers America? Nope, you can't sit over here. I said, where am I supposed to sit? Sit over there where the radio guys. I said, okay. And nobody said anything to me in that whole game except that one guy ran me out of the press box. Wow. And so I'm sitting over there. Game's over. I'll follow the media down because everybody wants to talk to Hank Aaron. And I get down to the clubhouse for the visitors. Aaron's not there. I see that he is he's dressing next to Ralph Garr, an outfielder who led the league in hitting. And so I'm about to walk over and ask Ralph Garr some questions about Aaron, and Aaron comes out and he goes to his locker. And I'm standing there and I froze. I'm thinking, my God, I'm sitting here with Hank Aaron. I used to play like I was him in the backyard and we were playing wiffle ball. And my lips were moving, but I couldn't ask anything. And the crowd was so large around him, I couldn't get close enough to hear anything he said. And then, boom, he was gone. I had to get back out to the bus. I went back out to the bus, come back. Next day, Dave Campbell said, "How'd it go?" I said, "It was fun, a lot of fun." He said, "You get some good quotes?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And so this could never happen today. And you get fired if you did what I did. I wrote a whole column quoting Ralph Garr on Hank Aaron, even though I never talked to Ralph. And so it was some really good quotes. And Campbell complimented me on my column. And I never thought anything else about it. And one year, I was with Dave and 3 other writers. We were driving to the Big 12 offices in Dallas for a convention. I went along because the Oilers weren't playing. Dave was, I thought, asleep. And I was telling this Ralph Garr Hank Aaron story to the 3 writers in the back. Campbell opens one eye and said, "If I'd known that, I had to fire you." And boy, so I was embarrassed about it and I was ashamed of it. But by God, I got my Ralph Garr Hank Aaron column.
There you go.
Hey, whatever.
So that's how I became a sports writer. And I came down here because Tony Peterson, the sports writer that I started talking to, he got me hired at the Waco Tribune Herald. Then he got me hired at the Chronicle. And then he was became the youngest sports editor in the country, and he put me on the Oilers. And then he was elevated to managing editor of the Chronicle and then editor. And I told him one time, "I've made you look really good." and now he's one of my closest friends, and he did the induction speech for me at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame. There's 3 people, Tony Peterson, Dave Campbell, and my journalism professor at Baylor, David McCam, who's 91, going strong here in Houston. I would not be where I am without having those 3 as mentors. Campbell died 2 years ago at 95, and Tony and David are still mentors, heroes, big supporters. And anytime I have something that's bothering me about my job, I call those guys or see them and talk to them, and they help bring me off the wall. It's
amazing how you can still contact them after all those years and they can still like be there for you, in one way or another.
I've been blessed.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
Awesome.
All right, Sam.
Me? All right. So really happy to talk to you. They have, when they fired Mike Vrabel, it kind of sent a shockwave through the state of Tennessee and a lot of fans. And, some of them wanted him gone, but I think the majority of them wanted to know why. And we have been through like a nausea of every talking head, every writer. There was an article in The Athletic by Rex Erode and Diana Rossini explaining maybe these are the reasons why or whatnot.
Well, I can tell you exactly the reason. You don't need to ask anybody else.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, give it to me.
First of all, everybody was shocked that Mike got fired. In January of 2021, he was coach of the year. Mm-hmm. And I believe last year, so he loses a quarterback. He's got a rookie. His offensive line is terrible. Has nothing to do with him. His receivers can't catch except hop. He loses Jeffrey Simmons, one of the best defensive players in the league. And I believe they lost 6 one-score games and 5 by 4 or fewer points.
That's correct.
And so the reason he lost a power play with Rand Cawthorn, and they're not going to admit that, of course, but Rand came in from San Francisco, and he wanted to put his stamp on the team. As the GM, he should. Mike's a very, very powerful presence. I saw that one report from somebody that said he's too intimidating. Well, Dan Campbell's pretty damn intimidating too, and that's not an excuse. The fact is Mike is a hell of a coach, and I'm stunned he didn't get a job. It didn't mean that he was passed over. He could have turned down a job and decided, I'm making millions of dollars. I'll take a job with another team to keep my foot in the door, and then maybe he'll be the hot product next year. But so Cawthorn, when I saw him get total control, Amy Adams Strunk gave him total control. Now, he told the media he had nothing to do with it. What do they expect him going to say?
Right.
Yeah, I won the power struggle because I wanted total control of me. He got final decisions on coaches, and that's dangerous. That's what came between Floyd Reese and Jeff Fisher. Floyd had in his contract he could fire assistant coaches, and Fisher was really loyal to his assistant coaches. And they got into a knockdown, drag-out argument in Jeff's office over Floyd's office when Floyd fired 2 or 3 coaches. And Jeff came to Houston, and he went to Bud's office unannounced, which he'd never done. And Bud saw him, and he went in there and came back, and he got 1 or 2 of them rehired. Well, when they had their great season in 99 and went to the Super Bowl, he got a new contract because teams like the Texans were interested in him. He made sure in that contract he got control of everything involving the coaches. He got control of the money that went to the coaches. He got control of who gets hired and fired. If you have a head coach and you get rid of a coach or 2 that he likes, you're asking for trouble. A general manager should never, ever have control of assistant coaches. If the head coach screws up and hires bad ones, fire him. But that's the kind of control that Rand Carthon has right now, and he may do a great job with it. And Brian Callahan, of course, he's going to agree to anything. He wants to be a head coach. Now, the best move that happened with them is getting Bill Callahan, one of the all-time great offensive line coaches.
Yeah.
We all think that they're going to draft an offensive tackle like Joe Alt. Well, what if the Chargers do? And what do they do? I think they'll take a receiver because everything they do has to be predicated on trying to find out if Will Levis can be a franchise quarterback. So the defense is, I don't think, going to get that first pick and shouldn't. And the defense needs to get healthy. Defense was never the issue. But anyway, that's what happened to Mike Vrabel. Nobody's ever going to admit it publicly, and I'm surprised the national media doesn't know that. It's pretty obvious when one guy gets control of everything over the guy gone, what happened?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, I do 2 talk shows in Nashville every week.
Yeah.
On Tuesdays, I do Outkick, usually at 3:40 on Tuesdays. We had to move it to tomorrow because schedule conflict. And then on Wednesday morning at 9:30, I do 30 minutes with Chase and Big Joe on 102.5, and I have a blast being on with all those guys. I do weekly shows in Houston, Austin, Waco, San Antonio, 2 Nashville, 1 Knoxville, and 1 Las Vegas. And I have fun doing those. I've been doing them for years, and they're always a lot of fun talking about the NFL. I'm talking about the Astros, too. Today on my Waco show, I talked about the Eclipse because I went to Waco for the Eclipse yesterday, and it was the best place in Texas to be because it went right over. Then it took me, usually it's 2 hours and 45 minutes coming home, took 5 hours and 45 minutes. And thank goodness the Astros were playing. So I love doing all those shows. And so this is my however many years since the Oilers have been gone, I've been doing radio in Nashville, which is one reason they've invited me to do a lot of charities up there. And I've had a blast knowing so many people up there in the media. And a lot of them I've been on the radio with. And to me, talking on the radio and getting paid is like stealing. First time I ever did it, 1976, KTRH down in Montrose. And I went in, Jerry Trupiano, the godfather of sports talk radio in Houston, had me on. And I went in, and I came outside in the parking lot, and the security guard's out there. And I walked up to the wall and put my hands against the wall. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "You better frisk me because I just stole from you guys." He's like, What? I said, "I just got paid to talk about sports." Greatest job in the world.
It's amazing.
I got turned on to you by Paul Kaharski. I've had the great honor and fun to spend a lot of time with him reading his article.
Yeah, I wouldn't go overboard on Paul now.
Oh, okay. You're right. None of us
said that.
But I enjoy Paul's candor, even when he ruffles feathers and whatnot, because I feel like you have to ruffle feathers.
He loves to ruffle those feathers, and he's done a great job on paulkaharski.com. Mm-hmm. He has to work his ass off because when you have your own website, you got to constantly have new information on there, and he's done so well. He's able to pay 2 or 3 more people. I told him next time you hire somebody, maybe you can hire me. I met all those media people in 95 because we thought the Oilers were moving up there in 95. had to do with 1 year left on their lease. And we figured everybody wanted them gone, and they'd let them go the lease. But then the county decided to get tough, said, nope, you're going to play out your lease. So all the members of the media, Jeff Legwall, who covers the Broncos for ESPN in Denver, and Paul Kaharski, and several of those guys are still working. They all came down here to cover the Oilers that season. And so I got to know all of them, spent a lot of time with them, have great respect for them. And when I was covering the NFL for 8 years, imagine this, the Oilers left after the 96 season. I didn't want to cover the Texans early because I knew they'd be terrible. Mm-hmm. And I covered so many bad teams with the Oilers. I had a job for 8 years. I went anywhere I wanted to go. I spent any amount of money I wanted to spend. Nobody said a word. And I wrote whatever I wanted as much as I wanted, which was one reason the Chronicle kept playing up the NFL. And during the season, I would have our Monday paper, which we had 2 open pages. That means no ads in the Chronicle. And I had an assistant in the office send the sports section several copies of it, starting with Paul Tagliabue, the commissioner, and the same note every week. The Oilers, the NFL may have left Houston, but the NFL is still alive in the Houston Chronicle. Mm-hmm. And when we got to Texans, one of the top people in the NFL told a group of NFL executives, because I was sitting there, this guy's the reason Houston got the franchise. And I'm like, well, Bob McNair spent $700 million and he built a new stadium. That's the reason Houston got the franchise. So I had a dream job. And after the 2004 season, when they finished 7-9, the boss said, well, look, the beat writer, Carlton Thompson, wants to go to be my assistant sports editor. We need somebody to cover the Texans. Well, you do it 1 year, then you go back to the NFL. And I go, yeah, well, okay, they're gonna be good for the first time. So I agreed to do it. They went 2-14. And then the bottom fell out of the newspaper business. And they said, well, we can't afford to send you on the road like you have been for the last 8 years. You'll have to either cover the Texans or you can write sidebars and do some features during the week. And I said, well, I'll cover the Texans, and which I did. And one of the reasons I retired from the Chronicle in May of 2022 is I just got tired of the routine. I've been doing it 47 years, 45 on the NFL. And I just didn't want to do the same thing anymore. So I thought I would continue on 6-10 for one more season, see if they won, it got any more fun, and then I'd ride off into retirement. And even though I was still doing all those radio shows. And so right after I retired, Mattress Mack calls me. Had to come out from Gallery Furniture, says he wants to start a website, that he wants to be the number. First he said, I'd like for you to come to work for me. I said, well, I'm flattered, but I don't know anything about selling furniture. And he goes, oh, no, that's not it. They were sitting at one of his dining room tables out in his store. And he said, I want to start a website that's the best in the country for high rollers. I said, well, I don't gamble. I said, I don't know anything about gambling. He said, I want you to do what you've been doing when you write your columns in the Chronicle. I've made a lot of money off you. I said, well, I don't know why. He said, because you use a lot of numbers and you back up your opinion with numbers, and gamblers can get a lot of stuff out of your columns. I said, well, I'm glad I didn't know that. That puts more pressure on me.
Yeah.
We started talking about it, and I recommended an editor, former Chronicle sports editor, Fred Fowler, who had his own gambling site, longtime host on 97, The Blitz on 97.5. Fred died 2 weeks ago. I gave a eulogy at his funeral Friday night, just like I'd given it at his dad's funeral 27 years before. And then we had this unbelievable celebration of life on Saturday. It's Friday night, and then we buried him on Saturday. But we had a blast. We got Richard Justice, John Lopez to write weekly columns, and Mac treated us fly first class everywhere. You talk about treating us great. But after 10 months, he pulled the plug because we didn't have any money coming in because we didn't sell ads. But it was fun. So I've been doing for 2 years now weekly video with Mattress Mack that we put on our social media platforms. And I have a blast doing that with him. And I love Talk Astros. I've been an Astros fan since the first pitch in 62, the Colt 45s. Everybody at Gallery Furniture wears Astros stuff.
Oh yeah.
So they love it, and I think they think they better keep up with it in case Mac asks them a question. So when I get out there and we record our video, I spend time talking to all the guys who work in there. And it's almost like being in the clubhouse, which I was last spring training, to talk to so many people so knowledgeable about the Astros, but Houston sports in general, and the Astros in particular.
Oh yeah.
So after that, so while I was doing that, 610 said, we'd like to beef up our website. Can you write a column for us? And I said, for the website? He said, sure. And that turned into 4 week. And they said, can you do a podcast with Sean Pendergast, who's my favorite guy there? And I said, sure. So that turned into 3. And so I was on the air 6 times a week. And then I think the 2nd week of January, they called me in, laid me off after 24 years. So I've been on local radio regularly for 39 years, and I'm probably about to make it 40, but it's a big secret. And so I thought, okay, I told my wife, I said, I'm ready to walk away. I don't care what she said. So now I do 2 weekly shows on KRIV on Mondays and Fridays at 8:20 with Nate Griffin. I do Texans radio on 6:10, 6 to 6:30 on Thursdays. The Mac video, I write 2 columns a week for HoustonTexans.com. And then, of course, I have all my radio shows. People ask me, how's retirement? I said, I don't even know how to spell it.
Right? Like,
you keep busy. Rios, go ahead, man.
Yeah, so I grew up born and raised in Houston. I grew up an Oilers fan, and you've been covering the team for years. What would you say is your favorite memory with the Oilers?
Well, that would mean if you would ask me my most memorable memory, it's throughout our history, we'll say one word and everybody will know what it is. Buffalo. But of course, that was my favorite. I have, when that game's on NFL Network, I'll have people text me, hey, the Oilers and Bills are on the NFL Network. And I'll tell them, text them back 2 words, and the second one's you. I asked Bruce Matthews about 6 months ago, I said, you ever paid any attention to the Buffalo game when it's rerun? He goes, I thought he'd say no, because most of those players tell me, no, why would I lived it? And Bruce says, I watch it every time. I said, really? Why? He said, because I believe in my heart that if I watch it enough, the ending will change.
Wow.
I said, you know you're going to wait a long time, right? He said, forever. So most of those guys, same way, I'll say Buffalo. The best Oiler memory, and I told Bob McNair, you're going to have to win a game to go to Super Bowl to supplant this game as the best in Houston football history. And that was a 79 divisional round playoff game at San Diego, Air Coryell. They were 18-point underdogs. Earl Campbell was out. Dan Pastorini was out. Kenny Burrow was out. Rob Carpenter, the backup running back, was injured. They shot him up with so much stuff, he thought he was in Guam. So they go out there to play the game, and the Oilers figured out that Dan Pastorini telegraphed run or pass. So Greg Bingham, inside linebacker and leading tackler, he would watch Fouts' right foot. Fouts, if he turned his foot to the right while he was calling signals, that meant he was going to drop back and pass. If he kept that foot straight, they were going to run. So Bingham would shout Army for a run, Air Force for a pass. Now, they didn't know where the ball was going. But if you got one back and you know it's going to be a run, that is a considerable difference. And the Chargers were loaded with great receivers. And Vernon Perry, the Oilers' strong safety, intercepted what is still a playoff record, 4 passes. And in the next game against Pittsburgh, in the AFC Championship game they lost, Vernon returned a Bradshaw interception for a touchdown. But they beat the Chargers. One time Rob Carpenter was running. He was on the ground. He was crawling back to the huddle. And that was the greatest victory in the city's history. And if the Texans ever get to the divisional round game they can actually win, That would be pretty big because it means we have a team in the AFC Championship game since the Oilers in '79, which of course is just a preposterous record of futility. And of course, if they went to the Super Bowl, that would be bigger. But the Oilers' worst one is Buffalo, and the best one is San Diego.
Nice.
Beautiful.
John, so
Yeah,
you mentioned that
Buffalo one gives me nightmares.
Buffalo one is is a nightmare one. So John, you mentioned that if the Texans were to make it to like the AFC Championship or whatnot. Now let me ask you, the Texans made some acquisitions during free agency. Joe Mixon, Daniil Hunter, Azeez Al-Shaair. We added some depth as well, and then recently, obviously, Stephon Diggs. Do you think with the addition of Stephon Diggs that helps elevate the team towards that level, or do you think it's all kind of like, well, you didn't really need him. You have Tank Dell, you have Nico Collins, and of course Dalton Schultz. Like you have receivers. What are your thoughts on the acquisition of Stephon Diggs to this?
Well, it's blasphemous here, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I think next what D would try to get the home field advantage, actually win a divisional playoff game for the first time in history. And last year they played the NFC South. Their crossover game was Arizona here. This year's crossover game is at Arlington. They play. They have an unbelievably difficult schedule. 5 division winners, counting Cowboys. Mm-hmm. They have 11 games against teams that had winning records. And they play, let's see, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, and then they play the division quarterbacks. That is a murderer's row, and that's one reason Caserio signed 11 defensive free agents. Now, most of those guys are just good special teams players, but they're going to be needed because they always have injuries. And then he re-signed 4 or 5. And something they did, and I still think right now, cornerback and defensive tackle are by far their biggest needs. One of the things that he did, and I think it was so smart, Jeffrey Okudah has been a huge bust after being a 3rd overall pick in 2020, but he's hurt. Now, he came back the last 2 years, started most of the games, but now he's on his 3rd team in 3 seasons. He's got a 1-year make-it contract. Sheldon Rankins had a 1-year make-it contract, and he got a $4 million raise to go to Cincinnati. Texans wanted to keep him, but Caserio puts budgets on players, and he'll break it a little bit. But $4 million, no, he wasn't going to do that with Rankins. And so Okudah, who obviously had talent, or he wouldn't have been rated that high, everybody had him rated as the top guy. So he's got a lot of incentive. He's still just 25 years old. And then C.J. Henderson, another bust. He was the 9th overall pick. He's in the same situation. You put money out there, you dangle money, and players know that if I play well and I'm a good teammate and I'm blessed to stay healthy, I got a chance to make more money. And Okudah and Henderson are not guys 30 years old hoping to cash in over 30. No, they're still young. They could have 2 more contracts. So I love the incentive, but you can't count on it. It's like you can't count on Derek Stingley Jr. to be healthy for the first time. So that's why, okay, you re-signed Desmond King. Okay, that's good. I'm still stunned they haven't brought back Steven Nelson. He played well. He's still out there. I think they've moved on. But if you have Stingley and he could stay healthy, and you use one of those 2nd-round picks on a corner like T.J. Tampa or Max Melton or Lassiter from Georgia, you've got a good young guy to develop, and they're desperate for a safety.
Yeah.
Last year, you got Jalen Petrie, who did not play well in the new system, but he did near the end of the season. Coaches love him. They're fired up about him. But when they played those playoff games, they had 3 other safeties and weren't even on the team when the season started. So, Jimmy Ward's going to get hurt. He's been hurt almost every year. Then you got Eric Murray, M.K. Stewart. You better get a safety. I think they should get a corner and a tackle in the 2nd and a safety in the 3rd, and then work on the other positions with the 4s and the other ones because they need them. And with those quarterbacks, they're going to be bombarding them. And Danico Autry, who has averaged 9 sacks a year since he turned 30, he's like wine. And so I think him and Daniil Hunter with Will Anderson Jr., who I expect to just explode.
Yep.
J.J. Watt did, and getting to Neil Hunter and Danico Autry will only help Will Anderson Jr. And if they could get like a tackle like Braden Piskey from Florida State and a dumbass like Devondre Sweat, the guy's a dumbass for two reasons. Number one, he's too heavy. If he was 340, he'd be a first-round pick because he can play. But they're worried about him being too lazy. They're worried about him eating too much of the bad food and having to put him on a diet. And then people on diets are miserable. I should know because I'm on enough of them. He is a great talent. And then he goes out and gets in a wreck at 4:15 in the morning at DWI. How stupid can you get?
Draft stock. Like,
But teams will go, what they'll have to find out now about him. And you'd think they know this about it. Does he have a drinking problem? Does he have a partying problem? Does he speed? What's he doing out at 4:15 in the morning right before the draft? Don't you know his agent went crazy when he saw him doing that? So it might cost him some more money, just like his weight has. And he doesn't look like a D'Amico Ryans tackle. You look at all those guys with the 49ers, they had good height and they weren't heavy. Because he put so much emphasis, number one, setting the edge by the ends. Jonathan Grenard and Will Anderson Jr. did a great job. And then I'm still stunned they traded Malik Collins. I've not gotten a good explanation for a 7th-round pick. And you don't see a team that sets its all-time sack record let 3 of its 4 starting defensive linemen go. Now, they replaced 2 of them, no problem. But that's why they need another tackle. And maybe they will indeed take Sweat, but I'd love to see him get frisky. He's frisky. He seems like he's more of D'Amico's type of tackle. So that's why I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, because not them. It's the schedule and the quarterbacks.
Okay. All right. Sam?
You mentioned Bill Callahan earlier. Do you have a good Bill Callahan story? Have you done anything in your career with him or anything like that?
I just watched him afar and I know what a good coach he is, because everywhere he's been, people have said that. And that was better, his son getting him to come there. And Browns didn't have to let him go. They could have forced him to stay, but they're not going to do that. He was their best free agent, and they signed a lot of free agents. They capitalized on all that money they had to spend, just like Nick Casario's had money to spend. And Rand Carthon, I think, has done a really good job during the offseason. But getting Callahan, at first I thought, okay, it's a no-brainer. But what if the Browns play hardball? What if they say, well, we want a draft choice? But they didn't. It was pure class. So he'll do a great job. And if you think they gave him a really good center in free agency in Cushenberry, he's got Peter Skoronski from last year at left guard, and Joe Alt, who I was around at Lombardi because I'm work with the Lombardi people, and I did a luncheon where I interviewed the finalists for an hour. And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, these guys would look good on the Texans. And Joe Alt is closer to 6'9" than 6'8", but he's not a big monster guy like, say, Orlando Brown at 6'7". He can move. And, of course, he's got the genes because of his daddy. If the Titans get him, plug him in at left tackle, or if the Chargers don't trade down and say they were to take Alt, then that will leave one of those elite receivers for the Titans. So everything they've done, not everything, but most of what they've done has been very wise. Put the weapons around Levis, because you have to find out, can he be the franchise quarterback? Usually a general manager comes in and he's got a guy there that somebody else drafted. That guy better play really well, or he's going to want his own guy.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense.
Rios?
Yeah, so this question is not football related. So you've done a lot of traveling. Which state would you say has the best barbecue?
Oh, Lord.
Well, Texas has the best, and Missouri has the second best. And I've had barbecue a lot, but I'm careful about ordering barbecue, because one time at a Super Bowl in Minnesota, like 20 years ago, I went to what was supposed to be the best barbecue place, and it was roast beef and tomato sauce, and it was packed. And everybody in there, oh, boy, this is good, and it made me want to throw up. And
Oh my heart.
and because
Wow.
I'm a Texan, I'll never find any place better food. Houston's not considered by the experts number 2 in the country for food to New York. San
Yeah.
Francisco will have a fit about that. And I've been to all those places, and because of we have such a diverse menu, so to speak, in Houston. And I'm eating Mexican food in a lot of other cities. Some that was great, some that I don't know what I was eating. But you can't beat Texas for food.
Telling you, Sam.
Oh, whatever. All right.
What do you think, Sam? What's better?
What? Well,
What's your favorite state for barbecue?
oh boy. I don't know, man. Martin's here, and I mean, brisket lasagna. I mean, come on.
What state? No, what state's your favorite state?
Oh, I mean, I've had it from Mississippi. I've had it from Texas, and it's very good. But give me the Tennessee, Memphis style dry rub, and I'll take it all day.
You're a homer.
One of my favorite barbecue places is Martin's in Nashville.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Incredible. Martin's is absolutely incredible. I go to the downtown location. I've been to both of them, or 2 of them. And I love Corky's barbecue in Memphis. They do have really good barbecue at certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
Never had it in Knoxville. I went there twice, but I didn't order barbecue. But yeah, it's good. And if I was just eating one place for one meal, I would put Martin's up against the best that Martin's has against the best that I think Houston has.
Yep.
During the pandemic, they were passing out the brisket lasagna for like $20. It'd feed a family of 4 or whatnot.
Wow.
And it was absolutely delicious. I was like, I could have this every single day for the rest of my life.
Well, I would have eaten all of it for the family of 4 in one sitting.
Yeah. So we have one of our friends, Alan Perales, who's a big time Cowboys fan. He said,
God bless you.
I don't take Cowboy questions.
no,
I'm still trying to digest Jerry being all in when he signed his snapper.
yeah, and I think that's what he said. He's still having a better offseason than we're having as Cowboys. It's like, I don't understand that either. You're all in, but you're not doing anything remotely close to basically helping your team out.
So what's the Cowboy question?
And no, that was just a comment that he posted.
He's just making a comment. Yeah.
He was making a comment that they're at least having better.
Cowboys are still going to be good. They're going to sign Dak to an extension, and they're going to get Micah Parsons signed and CeeDee Lamb signed, just like they did with Aikman and Irvin and Smith. And then at some point, Jerry's not going to start over at his age. At some point, Jerry will be out, whether he dies or his sons take over and he can't do it anymore. They'll keep pushing the cap down the road, and then they'll have to pay the piper. But they're still going to be, they could win 12 games again, get back in the playoffs, blow it again. But I think that the Cowboys will still make the playoffs, maybe win the division, although it's been, 20 years since somebody's repeated as NFC East champion?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about Damian Pierce. Like this season, almost like Jalen Petrie, it felt like that system wasn't really for him. What are your expectations, John, this season, for Damian Pierce?
I watched on the NFL Network the other night, the Texans' first victory last season in Jacksonville when they started 0-2, and I'm thinking, oh my God, why did I pick them to win 6 games? I should have picked 4. And then they go to Jacksonville and they win by 20 despite so many players being out.
Yeah.
And I watched that game over and over, and Pierce had some good, hard runs in that game. But I think Chris Strasser, the first-year line coach, he never coached the zones game. I was surprised he got hired. Then he had to start 11 linemen. When I'm off with you guys, I'll be doing my next column for HoustonTexans.com.
Nice.
And it's about why are we not talking at all about an offensive lineman and the team needs. Now, I don't think it's a priority, but I'm going to write, considering they had to start 11 linemen, which was more than any in the league, and all the players they missed and had to start, if you think about it, is miraculous. that they were as good as they were with that offensive line. And the fact Pierce started the first 7 games. He just was not suited for the zone scheme. And if he can't do it again, if he can't adjust, and then he's used to getting the ball and running straight. And he either can go through the holes or run over people, and he loves contact. Well, that's physical offense. And then everybody's ever run the zone scheme like Kubiak, they get so mad when you say it's a finesse running game. But in this case, the linemen go one direction, and you're supposed to go that, plant your foot, and then cut back and make sure you find the hole. It requires some patience and discipline, and that's not what Pierce had. Now, maybe he will adjust. He had a great attitude about it. You know, he knew he struggled with it, and he couldn't have been classier about it. And I read a quote after the season in The Athletic. You mentioned Joe Rexroad earlier, who's a great writer covering
He's good.
Titans. And Joe had a quote from Derrick Henry saying, I regret so much I didn't learn the zone scheme sooner. And I'm thinking, well, the Texans are sure glad you didn't. And so I'm thinking, you know, once he learned it pretty well. I'm thinking maybe Dameon Pierce will come back and he will have picked it up, or he will pick it up during the off-season program and during training camp. And if that were the case with him and Joe Mixon, that would be tremendous. And I still think they'll maybe draft a player low who has experience in the zones game, or maybe, now this is never going to happen, but I remember when they found a running back who wasn't drafted, who'd played the zone scheme in college and only had 500 yards rushing his last year, signed him as an undrafted free agent, put him on the practice squad. He got cut twice. Then the next year he led the NFL in rushing. Could they find another Arian Foster? And there's never going to be another Arian Foster, but just find a guy like that who can contribute, knowing the scheme. And the best thing about taking guys for that scheme, look at all the 1,000-yard rushers they had in Denver, like Terrell Davis, 6th-round pick. All the guys they had that came out of nowhere and rushed for over 1,000 yards. Steve Slayton, a 3rd-round pick, here had 1,300 yards, and he disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. But if you understand the scheme, and now Chris Strasser's going to understand it a lot better, I think the running game is going to be vastly improved, and that takes pressure off of Stroud. And I saw somebody doing an over-under online last week, fans, 40 touchdowns over-under, and all the fans are going over, and I'm thinking, boy, if I could put money on that, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I don't think there's any way Stroud's throwing for 40 touchdowns, knowing what they want the offense to be.
Wow. Okay. All right. Sam?
We look at the AFC South, and, you know, you have the Texans that see that window open, and they're trying to get it done. You have us who are changing. I mean, the Titans are changing their entire philosophy around how they do football offensively and defensively. You have the Colts pushing forward with Richardson. And I think the Jaguars are trying to revamp their team to make it better through coaching. I really couldn't tell you whatnot. Is the AFC South finally going to get like the respect it deserves? Because it seems like we just get stepped over all the time.
This time last year, there were 2 things we knew about the South. The Jaguars would finish first and the Texans would finish last.
Right.
You know, if you think about this time last year, Texans didn't have a quarterback. We had no clue how good D'Amico was going to be, how long it would take him to adjust to being a head coach after he had only been a coordinator 2 years. And then they didn't have a pass rusher other than 55-year-old Jerry Hughes.
Yeah.
And you think about, man, oh, man, how far they've come. You know, the worst bet I lost ever was Landry Locker asked me on 610. He said, would you take Jacksonville to the field? I said, I'll take Jacksonville, $100. He said, all right, you're on. When I had to pay him that $100, oh, God. Now we have 2 more. I bet Brock Bowers be a top 10 pick and Bo Nix be in the first round. And I'm like, please at least split. And if I lose both of them, I'm going to go up to 610, and I'm going to go in, and I'm going to surprise him and Lopez while they're on the air. And I'm going to walk in while they're talking. I'm going to slap $200 bill on the table right in front of Landry. And yes, they will still let me in the door.
Nice.
So I Trevor Lawrence has not been a generational quarterback. We all know that. They keep moving the pieces around with him. Now, Etienne's a good running back, and their offensive line, who knows? They keep making changes. Ridley's gone. Ridley, by the way, had a terrible game against the Texans in that first game. And so who knows what they've got? Will Lawrence all of a sudden in his fourth year, will he be the franchise quarterback? Will he play like a franchise quarterback? He's got that big contract coming, so maybe he'll have his best year. Indy, I said all year, they're better without Anthony Richardson because Richardson started 13 games in college. He was lost. He's a runner. He got knocked out every game he played. He is a great talent, but he needed experience of watching and learning before he played. And if he played, they're going to be bad. He's going to probably have more yards rushing than passing. Now, how much did he learn while he was rehabbing? He did beat the Texans. And in the Titans, it's all about Will Levis. You've got to have the quarterback. Cam Levis, he doesn't have to play like he did in his debut last year, but he's got to be more consistent. He's got an arm. He can run. He's physically tough. He's got to play smarter. Quit trying to show people how strong he is. I wish he would get some sleeves instead of walking around flexing his guns for everybody. And so this division could have 4 quarterbacks that we're going to see against each other a lot. And so I'm really fired up for the season. Last year, they got experience with 3 teams had winning records. And when the Texans beat the hell out of the Browns, they got a lot of respect. CJ got a lot of respect. So did D'Amico. And so the only thing is, to me this year, it's the schedule. And Jacksonville found it out last year. Remember in 2019, they beat Buffalo here in the wild card game. They go to Kansas City, choked a 24-point lead. But we were all so fired up about next season. And it'd be a tougher schedule. And then they trade Hop, and the wheels started to come off. And that schedule was brutal. The first 4 weeks were brutal. And OB went 0-4. They get rid of him. Then Romeo gets the Jaguars and wins the first game. So they're not going to be like that. They don't have Jack Easterby as interim general manager anymore. And they are a legit team with good coaches. And I hope they're able to take the next step, because this time next year, we're going to be talking about Gerard Johnson as the new offensive coordinator, and somebody will be the new quarterback coach, maybe Case Keenum.
Yeah, there you go. Rios?
You're skipping with the AFC South. So what are your expectations for CJ Stroud next year? He took some major strides after that Jaguars game. What are your expectations for him into this upcoming season?
Defensive coordinators have a whole off season to watch everything he did over and over and over again. Usually it's like in a baseball pitcher. If you're new and you go through the lineup, boy, you might be mowing them down. Then the second time around, well, you gave up some hits. Third time around, you're out. Their defensive coordinators are good. And because of the schedule, they're playing some that are outstanding. So I could see him throwing about close to 30 touchdown passes, running for 4 or 5. And if he's got a running game, that would help a lot. When we think about CJ's rookie year and how bad the line was because of injuries, guys playing out of position, Fant's gone. They got as much out of him as they could get out of him. Michael Dieter, he didn't play down the previous year with Miami. He's a special teams player, and he had to start. So you'd think the law of averages would be that they could stay relatively healthy, at least compared to last year. So I think the line will be better. The receivers, barring injury, should be right there with Detroit, counting a tight end, second behind the 49ers. And I think Stroud will benefit from all that. The key is, do they have to throw it a lot to play catch-up, which won't be good, and they're involved in high-scoring games? That would mean these opposing quarterbacks are tearing up the defense. That's why they got to get another tackle who can get after the quarterback up the middle, because even though Danico Autry is unbelievable, he's still 34 years old.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you have some more players. Now, Heinisch is back. Khalil Davis, very underrated to me. Every time he played, which wasn't much, he made a play. And then they got those new guys, Foley and Foley Fakasi. Is that how you pronounce it? Fakasi? And Fatakasi, yeah. Foley Fatakasi, and then Tim Settle. But most of those guys weren't wanted by their previous team. So you have to be realistic. If you really want to keep a guy, you can keep him. If they wanted to keep Bernard, they could have kept him. He would have taken what Autry got, but he's not worth it. But Nick had a plan. And right now, based on what we've seen between Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans and the way they work, if D'Amico says, Nick, I really got to have this player in free agency. Man, this player would fit in great with what we do. Caserio's going to do it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have ego like some general managers that think they got to control everything. Nick is not he talks a lot and says nothing. That's because of where he came from. He can't.
Right, Patriots.
He was born there. And so he still has a lot of the Patriot way in him, but he is one smart guy who's done an outstanding job.
You mentioned about, not like those, GMs that have those egos or whatnot. Like, I got to say, this past season, I didn't, like you said earlier, John, I didn't expect the turnaround to come like that quick.
Nobody did.
Nobody did. Besides like all the years that, the last few years with OB and then Jack Easterby, what it was like. And then seeing now just a complete 180, how good this team could actually be. It was great seeing that turnaround as a Texans fan.
Oh my goodness, the buzz right now.
Right.
The buzz has been, it'll never be like it was the first season because we got football back. But right now, after the 2018 season when they went 11-5 and got beat by Andrew Luck, we were all excited about 2019. And we never, when O'Brien traded Hopkins, even though they were favored to win the division, the people weren't fired up.
No.
The only time in this franchise history, other than the first season, fans have been fired up like this when Kubiak was here.
Yes.
Gary being a native, and he came back and they won the first division title, and people were pumped about the Texans. And right now they're pumped about the Texans again. And all those all those people on the administrative side of the organization, Greg Grissom, the president, having to sell tickets during that 3-year run of unprecedented unpopularity because of O'Brien and Easterby. They feel like they've died and gone to heaven.
Yeah, you could tell by the whole the culture around it. Like, we used to hear the word by that with OB and then the culture and Jack, the culture, and it was like almost PTSD that we got every time we heard culture. But now when you hear it, it's like it's a complete different meaning to it. We had Kareem Jackson on, and he was praising D'Amico Ryans, what he's done with the organization, and even Quentin Demps. We asked him a few questions about like, hey, what was D'Amico like before he was coaching as a teammate? And he said he was just a leader. So what is awesome is what I see here, and you correct me if I'm wrong, of course, a lot of these guys respect the hell out of like D'Amico Ryans, that they're willing to play for him, they're willing to do things for him because he's a natural born leader, as opposed to when we had, and all respect to Lovey and David Cola here, but it didn't seem that way when they were here.
Well, it wasn't. And in fairness to Cully, what he was given, because Nick was tearing it down and starting over, what he was given, players going through the revolving door every day, it was terrible. Now, I love David Cully. He is a great guy, one of the all-time best guys. Yeah. And then I liked Lovey too, but Lovey's fascination with Pep Hamilton as the offensive coordinator baffled me. Pep, to me, was the worst I've seen with the Texans. Playing Rex bleeping Burkhead over Damian Pierce early in the season. Anyway, I don't want to get started on Burkhead. I'm sorry, on Pep Hamilton. Great guy, but just was in over his head as a coordinator. And plus, he got stuck with a mediocre quarterback. But everything has come together at the right time. Yes. And the unsung hero here in all this is Hannah McNair.
Yes.
They will never admit this. And I wrote a column on the McNairs in March of a year ago for Gallery Sports. in which I sat down with him for about 45 minutes in Arizona during the NFL spring meetings. And then I wrote one about midway through this season on them with Sports Radio 610's website. And now, after the draft and the uniform unveil, I'm going to sit down and do another column. They will not admit this, but I can tell you, Hannah is the one that got them all to come to their senses on Easterby. She's also the one that got them to come into their senses on hiring Josh McCown. Now, McCown may turn out to be a Hall of Fame head coach, but him being pushed by Easterby, they were best friends.
Yeah.
They had him ready to announce, and finally she's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
And and in the column I did for Gallery Sports, Cal talked about her role, and he welcomes it. He welcomes her input. He wants her opinion. He doesn't have a big ego where he wants people to think it's me doing everything. And when they had 3 kids, and when the youngest one got to go to school, then she had more time to come to the office and training camp and everything. She's a great PR person. She's comfortable in any situation, and she spends time every day during training camp coming over talking to media. And so does Cal, but Cal's more comfortable being in the background.
Right.
Now that Kerry McNair's bid to force his mother to try to get his mother declared mentally incompetent, which was not the case.
Right.
I go into her suite and talk to her before every game because I've known her since '97, and she's not mentally incompetent. Right. Physically, she has issues from a stroke, but she can talk just like we're talking.
Yeah.
And she's just quieter. And so now they went through that for like 4 years. Ever since Bob died, Kerry McNair's wanted to get the team. Well, now that's over. They are in a great place. Everybody's in a great place. It is all about football for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, as it should be. Sam, last round?
Nope, I think I'm good.
Okay, Rios, last round?
All right. Okay, so I know you've seen the new uniforms. I know you can't give us too many details. Maybe a hint or so for the big reveal in a couple of weeks.
Well, they made us sign non-disclosure clauses,
NDAs,
contracts, and then when we went to see them, we went downtown where the old post office building was, great entertainment center, and they made us turn in, I say us, the media, made us turn in our cell phones. So we go in, and they have 4 big dummies. Each one has the current uniforms, and then 4 more had new uniforms, and then they had guys come out and model the new uniforms. And so what I liked about it, I could walk up to the dummies and walk around them and see everything. And so if I tell you guys, they may have to kill me.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this, those uniforms, they look like.
Uh-oh.
I love it. I love it. We heard every word, John. No, that was great stuff.
I was literally
I'll
sitting.
get all that.
Yep.
And the most important thing is,
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this: they still got red, white, and blue. Bob McNair loved red, white, and blue because he was as patriotic as they came.
Yeah.
And I think as it is when you change something radically, there's going to people don't like it. That one that leaked, and then Cal put it out, the white one, and people say, I don't like that. Well, they just saw a guy on their knees. Once you see him standing and you see behind him and everything, I like the material, I like the colors, and I think most of the fans will like it, although some wouldn't like no matter what it was. And but I think it's such a big deal to fans. I don't give a rat's ass about uniforms. I only care about who's wearing them. And those uniforms last season looked a hell of a lot better than they did the 3 previous seasons.
Right? Amen to that.
Sure did. John, I got to tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on. I'd love to have you on again and talk some Astros maybe, when we have more time.
I can talk about the Astros all day. You guys just let me know until I'll have time after the draft. And
yeah.
just let me know when you want to do it. Since you guys do it at night, that's perfect for me.
I
And
got
by
you.
the way, the Astros are now 3-3 after leading 3-0.
Oh, all right. So I got your number, John. I'll shoot you a message once we're ready. But hey, I'm about to end the show. Don't go just yet, but I'm just going to end it. Guys, thank you again for joining us with the legend himself, John McClain. Please follow him on Twitter at McClain_on_NFL. And of course, we want to thank our awesome friend, Sam, for joining us here at Mr. First Down on Twitter. And of course, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel at JustFans22. Don't go just yet, John. We're ending the show.
And all my columns are on HoustonTexans.com.
There you go. Please look at John McClain's columns on HoustonTexans.com. Hall of Fame writer, guys. Amazing guest. All right, guys, that's going to be it. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Southwest Alief, Texas, throw down here and it's so infectious. We ride for the Houston Astros, Rockets, Dynamo, and them Texans. If you ain't never been down here, but rule number one, you gon' respect us. Just fans in my speakers, new one drop, they bout to bless us. I might right through the SWAT, playing just fans right through your spot. Look, and I don't know what you thought, but right here, dog, we gon' rep the squad. Got HU, I might fit it, then on my jersey, you gon' know when.